In this third example, you will calculate the sum of these numbers. If you see this kind of unknown variable name, just like this, and it means we will read an input from our user, and we will store this number into this n variable. We will calculate the summation operations result, then we will print this result. Initially, you will give this value as 1, initial value as 1, then the highest number will be n, user's number. Then you will update this some variables value for each step. This question says find 3 blah blah plus n. So we will store this result in some variable, and then we will print this value at the output. Here is the start point. Then I will inform please. Let's look at the solution. I'm assigning this i's first value as 1, and here is the initial value as sum for 0 for summation, for sum value. Then I'm printing this information message. I'm reading this and as an input from our user. Then we will check what if this i's current value is less than or equal to n. If the answer is yes, we will update our sum value by adding this i's current value. Then we will increase our I by 1 to access this next value. Then, as you see, we will check this one again. Next value of for I, whether it is less than n or equal to n or not. If this condition is false, we will terminate our loop and we will print our sum final value and we will end this process. Okay. So compare your solutions with this. Is there any question? Here is the solution. Sorry. As you see, it's a little bit different from my solution. It is checking what if this I is greater than n, but I'm checking what if this I is less than n or equal. Okay. So these are not the same. Yes, the logic and the scenario is the same, but solution is different. Okay. Okay, I'm opening the next question, if it is okay. It seems a little bit complex. And the other questions. Now you will try to solve this series result. You will create an algorithm and flow chart for this series. So how can you construct this logic? Actually, we have two unknown value in here. We should read this x value from user, and also we should read this and value from our user. And for example, for this one, we're starting with 1 and then minus x and then plus x squared and then minus 3 times x. So we are changing this sign for some terms. How can we arrange? How can we control this structure? In this previous example, we are adding all of these positive numbers. We have no problem. But in this question, we have a sign problem. Try to create a solution initially. How can you solve? You should create a rule for this calculation. How can we create? So if this value is 1, actually your summation can be start with 1, right? And then we will add this term volume one by one until this volume. So how can we arrange this sign equation because we're changing this part? I think initially I can define a sign variable. I'm just thinking. And for term, I can multiply this number with sign. And in this situation, I will update my sum value with this term. For each step, actually, we will repeat this process. Try to consider this. Okay? If you multiply minus and minus, you will get a positive number. Try to imagine. And then if you multiply a negative number with a positive number, you will get a minus result again. So initially, I want to explain this left side to you. I have inputs as n and x. According to this x and x, we will actually print a number as output. I initial value represents this exponential value here. And also it's a control parameter. So we are increasing these numbers, as you see. According to this, actually, we are controlling the multiplication operation. In here, some initial value, and I'm defining term. So what is term? Term will be this one, will be this one, will be this one. Okay? So we are carrying the sign at the same time while we are defining our term. So if this I is greater than n, and then we can go to this label process, we will end this process, but this value is less than n, and I want to calculate this first term. And first term is x, this one. So here is the minus, and term is just a one for initial step, and then here is the multiplication. Now, the new value for this term, x can be 5, for example. So, term is 1, x is was entered as 5, and then its new value is minus 5, for example. Then we are updating our sum by adding term, and I'm updating this I to 1. Step 4. We have no problem with I. You may repeat this process again and again. So this was minus 5 from previous step. Then here is another minus. So it will be a positive number. Then I multiplying 5. So the result will be a positive 25. Okay. So this one will be positive 205 will be equal to this value, terms new value. Okay, so for example, it can be minus 1, then for the third term, so terms previous value from first step was minus 1. I'm updating this one by adding new term. So term's new value will be 20. Okay. So By repeating this process, for example, for the third term, try the imagination. So we will see this minus again. Term includes this one from previous step. Then we will multiply this term with x again. Okay? So it's a positive number and it brings minus this number. Okay? Actually, these are not coding, these are just math. Okay? So, if you have a strong background in math, you will have no problem for this solution. We are just creating orders for the solutions. Okay? So, and also you may create some different algorithmic solutions. It's just one of them. For example, I can start with one for some operation, and I can create two different groups, positive terms and negative terms. I can calculate two different sums. After all, I can calculate some of them to assess this latest volume. Okay, so you can actually create so different examples, different solutions, especially for this kind of scenarios. Okay. Do you have any question? And after this, now it's your turn. You will write an algorithm, and this algorithm will calculate the average grade of 7 students. Okay, you will read 7 students' grade, and then you will calculate the average value, and you make grades. It's a little bit easier than the other question, as you see. Even if you are repeating 3 times for your loop, you should try a loop again. So counter size is not important. If you are repeating something again and again, so you should implement a loop. This student counter can be 3, but again you should write a loop again. You should first grade for 7 times. So for this reason, it's define grade variable, for example, and then calculate average value. Initially, you should calculate sum of this grade. It means you should define sum as zero initially. Then you will update this sum value for each direction. Okay, let's talk about results. And actually, as I say, you should work hard. Uh, generally all of you, actually, instead of you, I'm very so nervous about your first midterm exam because you're not trying to solve these questions on your own. Understanding, yes, it's a good point for the solutions, but you should try to solve these questions on your own. Okay. After this understanding process, please try to construct on your solution. And we have 7 students into this scenario. Are using this counter C, it can be any name, and also you may see different solutions in your slides. I'm just thinking this one. My counter starts with 1, and I will read some grades, and I have no initial value. It's just a variable name. Instead of it, you may write G, you may write X, it can be any name. And then I will calculate sum, then, and this, it has to include an initial value. And I will calculate average. So these are some variables. I will use these variables in my solution. And I will check what if this current value is less than 7. Okay? Because the number of students is 7. We will read these numbers, these grades for 7 times. And let's initially try to construct this yes way, and then we implement these other cases. And it can be better for you. I want to print an information message. Enter. I want to enter grade. So after this, I will read this grade. It must be this variable name. Variable 1. And then, after this reading operation, I want to write total one. So, after this read, we will update our sum total grade values. We increased our control parameter by 1, and then we are going back to this area. If the answer is no, we will calculate average according to sum's latest value. Then print. Okay. So let's repeat the solution again. We have a control variable, and then we will read some grades, and we will calculate the sum of these grades. And according to the sum value, we will calculate average value. So we will check what if this control variable is less than or equal to 7, because the number of our students is 7. So if the answer is yes, we will print an information message, enter grade. Then we will read this grade variable's current value. According to this entered value, we will update our sum. Then we will increase our counter by 1. So we will go back to this area. So counter's new value is 2. So we will read second student's grade. Actually, in this part 2 is less than 7. We will pick this way again. Then for 3, we will print and calculate something, and then we will run this process again and again. Just check for 7. If the answer for 8, sorry, if this new value is 8, we will pick this way, we will pick this no way, and then according to this sums latest value, by dividing 7, we are calculating average value, average grade of this class, then we are printing this average value. Okay. So for example, in this question, if they say calculate the average value of 10,000 students and 10,000. That's all, actually. So quantitative operations actually can be hard for this kind of structures, but you should write once and you should use this solution for every different values into this kind of scenarios. Okay, so I'm keeping them. So for example, after these parts, you may ask to you, for example, if I remove this first process, if I remove this one, so what will be the problem? You may ask this kind of questions on to you. In here, for example, you should define this counter to control this loop structure, right? If you didn't assign any initial value, how can you control this loop counter, right? So for example, this real means actually, real is a kind of variable type, just like an integer. So for example, if you want to calculate this kind of numbers, for example, this average cannot be an integer number. It can be a floating number. It can be a double number. So we have some different types, as you see, which are not an integer number. Real numbers you may remember from the math easily. And you don't need to define these types into these flowcharts, by the way. You may write directly count equals 1, sum equals 0. That's enough for my solutions. And you don't need to define these types, actually. Real is the type, just like an integer. And also, is there anything else? Is there anything else different thing from my solution? For example, we could add arrow direction, all of this process. We have no direction between this process. And it seems like a correct defined method in the background, but we have no lead method as a correct defined method. Instead of this, print something just like our solution. Okay? Because this real reading operation in this solution, we have a redefined method which was named as read, and we are calling this read function to read the empty value. But we have no predefined, but we will see some examples in future, but we have no job in this time. Okay. For example, create the algorithm to find the average age of all the students in the class. Yeah, instead of reading the grade, we are reading just an age. The difference is this. So how can we start constructing for this solution? How can we start? So where is the starting point for this solution? Initially, how many students? You should think what are actually what is the unknown part of this solution. So user can enter, can I define, can I give this initial value for this variable? So you can easily find this answers on your own. So don't forget that you should create your own solution. And how many students, for example? It's so simple question. For example, how can I solve this problem? I will bring some aids. I will bring some information methods. I will actually define a calculation to calculate this average value. To calculate this average, initially you should find the sum of these values, right? So step by step, you will read fast. Okay? So don't worry about this because these questions are can be hard for you. It's just the first time. Okay, let's have a break. If you have no more question, you may add your sign and you may leave. But if you have question, we may continue after the break. Sadece hafta 7 atıyorsunuz. Tamam mı?